Princess Diana's letters have always revealed her love, fears, and hopes. In 2024, a newly uncovered letter to her sons William and Harry sheds light on the future she had envisioned for them. She wanted them to have the freedom she never had, urging them to put happiness before duty. But why did this letter remain undisclosed for so long? What did it reveal about her struggles, and did her words predict the lives her sons would later choose? The intimate remarks that Princess Diana left behind have been the subject of decades of conjecture. Over the years, bits of a life cut short, letters, notes, and diary entries, have come to light again, providing insights into her hopes, concerns, and thoughts. However, a letter that was long believed to be lost has since surfaced, a very private letter addressed to her two sons, William and Harry, rather than to a friend, counselor, or member of the royal family. Furthermore, what it exposes may alter our preconceived notions about Diana's last year. The letter has been out of the public eye for more than 20 years. After being discovered in a private collection of Diana's private correspondence, experts were taken aback when it first appeared in 2024. This was not a casual communication between family members or a simple statement of affection. There was something much more important written in Diana's distinctive handwriting. The telegram conveyed the feelings of a mom who had already anticipated the struggle her kids would encounter. The public was never intended to see the letter. It now demands to be heard, though one must go back to the years when Diana first recognized that the future she desired for her children would not be easily achieved. In order to comprehend the significance of this discovery, her struggle to be involved in William and Harry's life grew more intense the minute her marriage to Prince Charles started to fall apart. Diana was aware that her status as a mother could be weakened once she was no longer the future king's wife, and that the royal institution handled such issues in its own way. Diana was already getting ready for the prospect that the royal institution might restrict her role by the time her separation from Charles was declared in December 1992. Royal heirs' upbringing had long been governed by the monarchy, and history had demonstrated that duty frequently took precedence over personal preferences. Diana believed her influence would be overshadowed by the same forces that had affected generations of royal children. As William and Harry grew older, letters from this time period show her increasing uneasiness, and she confided in friends about her worries. One such letter, written in 1993, had a line that would seem almost prescient in retrospect. She wrote, "I live for my boys. I would be lost without them." It was more than just a declaration of love. It was a request, an admission of the strong emotional bond she had with her kids, and the worry that it would be broken. Diana made conscious decisions to give William and Harry a taste of life outside the royal walls. As her public presence grew, she took them to fast food restaurants, amusement parks, and other locations where they could meet people from beyond their royal circle. Instead of receiving private tutoring on the palace grounds, she demanded that they go to a public school. She made these choices carefully in order to make sure her sons knew about the world outside of royal formality. However, not everyone agreed with these decisions. For a very long time, the royal family had kept a distance from the general public, a formality that kept them apart from everyday life. Diana's strategy went against this custom, which made her popular with the general public but also caused friction inside the palace. Not everyone was at ease with her redefining what it meant to raise a future king and his younger brother. When Diana sat down for the now famous interview with the BBC's Panorama in 1995, the tension increased. It was a turning point in history. She talked openly in the interview about the demands of royal life, her internal family conflicts, and most importantly, her worries about William and Harry's future. She stated, "I want them to understand people's emotions, people's insecurities, people's distress, hopes, and dreams of people." Although her remarks struck a chord with the general public, they were viewed as improper within the palace. Diana had evolved from a mother standing up for her kids to a woman publicly opposing the establishment. The ensuing months were tumultuous. When Diana's divorce from Charles was formalized by 1996, she no longer held the title of Her Royal Highness. Her place in the royal hierarchy had changed. Even though she was still the Princess of Wales and enjoyed considerable rights, her dedication to her sons, however, remained unshakable. In spite of the changes in her status, she kept writing to them, leaving behind letters and notes that reflected her feelings at various stages of their lives. Some were straightforward displays of affection, but others betrayed her more profound worries. During William's time at Eton College, Diana wrote him a letter emphasizing the virtues of kindness and compassion, values she had always aspired to inculcate in both of her children. She added, "You are so loved, and I hope you never forget that. Taking care of others comes first." One of the numerous letters she left behind, however, would eventually stand out, an urgent final message that gave the impression Diana was aware of her limited time. After being believed to be lost for a long time, this letter was discovered in 2024. This note was different from the ones she had written before. In addition to words of love, it included a warning, a message that, looking back, seemed almost terrifying. Diana's worries for her children's future grew as her life approached its last year. She further separated herself from the royal hierarchy by early 1997 and devoted her time to philanthropic endeavors. She gained international recognition for her work with AIDS patients, landmine victims, and other charities. But behind the scenes, her main goal was to ensure that William and Harry would have a future free from the demands of the royal family. She had privately voiced concerns that her sons would eventually be subjected to the same circumstances that had smothered her. She was worried that Harry, the younger brother, would struggle to fit in and that William, the future king, would be stuck in a system that did not permit emotional freedom. She expressed this worry several times, and it started to appear frequently in her correspondence. These worries seemed to grow more pressing as the months went by. Later, friends and employees noticed that Diana had grown more watchful and conscious of the dynamics in her environment. She wrote about an increasing sense of discomfort in a letter, but she did not explain why. She wrote, "I have so much I want to say, but I'm not sure if I'll ever get the opportunity." Only later would the significance of those words become evident because Diana's life was about to take a catastrophic turn by the time summer arrived. Now more than ever, whatever message she had wanted to leave her sons was crucial. Diana's life had a sea change during the summer of 1997. She had finally left the formal obligations of royal life after her divorce was formalized the year before. However, she had also cut ties with the very organization that had previously offered a degree of security. In the process, Diana was free to follow her own path without being constrained by royal convention, but this freedom had costs. She was more vulnerable than ever to the years of unrelenting media attention. Since she was no longer protected by the security measures granted to senior royals, everywhere she went, photographers followed her, examining every facet of her life. Diana had been subjected to this degree of scrutiny for over 10 years, but now that she was free from the royal family's formal restrictions, she was essentially on her own. Diana maintained a strong commitment to her position as a mother. In spite of the demands, she made sure William and Harry had experiences outside of the palace gates by frequently appearing with them in public. However, she was also writing in private, leaving behind notes, letters, and messages that expressed her worries, her love for her kids, and her optimism for their future. Over the course of the summer, she traveled extensively and spent time with friends and family. Diana's correspondence seemed to take on a new urgency during this time. Although she had already written a great deal about the emotional toll that royal life had taken on her, there was now an undercurrent of worry in her writing that she had shared with her closest friends and family. She had taken a holiday with her friend Dodi Fayed in the south of France before the end of July. Newspapers speculated about her personal life during this time, and photographers followed her everywhere. The media coverage was unrelenting. Diana, who had fought against journalistic intrusion for a long time, was once again the target of intense scrutiny. She nevertheless kept in touch with her sons, who were spending the summer with the royal family in Scotland. She often sent them brief comments and reminders of how much she missed them in her frequent letters. Those close to her later disclosed these letters, which demonstrated the intimate relationship she had with William and Harry. She told them that she constantly thought about them wherever she was. During this time, one letter had the straightforward but moving words, "You are my world, and I will always love you." Diana frequently told her sons this kind of thing, but in the closing months of her life, it took on considerably more significance. Growing conjecture regarding Diana's future plans characterized the last weeks of her life. Some speculated that she was getting ready to expand her humanitarian work to a more international scale, while others thought she was poised to make a significant public statement regarding her relationship with the press. Diana spent some time on the French Riviera before arriving in Paris on the evening of August 30, 1997. One thing was clear, she was still thinking about her kids. Even though the events that followed would be the focus of countless analyses, Diana had called William and Harry that night before she left her hotel, a phone call that would be regarded as their final one. She reportedly spoke to them with the same warmth and affection she usually possessed, and was in a good mood at the time. The call appeared to be routine. However, looking back, it turned out to be one of the night's most important moments because Diana's life would end tragically in a car accident at the Pont de l'Alma tunnel in Paris a few hours later. The globe fell into sadness as word of her death spread. Beyond the widespread sorrow, however, two little boys had suddenly lost their mother. After spending the summer apart from her, William and Harry would now have to face a world devoid of her. There was a profound sense of loss in the days that followed. However, there was another issue that would be asked by many in the years to come. Had Diana left her sons anything? An epistolary note, a written declaration of her affection, a peek at what she had desired for them? She had already shared some of her opinions in previous letters, interviews, and remarks, but was there more? If so, why had it been kept a secret for so long? The grief was unbearable in the days after Diana's death. The world lamented the passing of a woman who had represented compassion, resiliency, and change in addition to being a princess. But the defeat was quite personal to William and Harry. The one person who had always put their happiness ahead of royal duty, their mother, was gone. They were just 12 and 15 years old when they were thrown into a realm of public grieving, where millions of people shared their sorrows, but their personal suffering was mostly kept quiet. How they were to deal with their loss was determined by the weight of royal expectations. Despite their grief, they were supposed to follow the monarchy's rules and remain calm as the world looked on. The attention on Diana's boys' coping mechanisms grew in the days preceding her funeral. Some pondered whether Diana had left them a parting letter, a note, or any other personal messages that they may save in her memory. Although no such letter was immediately made public, Diana's close friends and family were aware that she had written to her boys on a regular basis. Even while she was away, she used her letters to remind them of how much they were loved, and she had always been expressive in them. While some of these letters were straightforward expressions of love, others had deeper significance, especially given the difficulties she was going through in her own life. Diana had always expressed her feelings through her words, and it's possible that she wrote something for her sons in her last months. Although William and Harry didn't talk much about their mother's last days and the years following her death, they had loving recollections of her. They frequently thought of her generosity, her laughter, and how she had made them feel like the most significant individuals in the world. Over the years, the letters she wrote to them became treasured memories of their mother. The royal family publicly upheld its custom of keeping private correspondence private. However, the letters Diana had left behind were discussed in secret. Some had been given to dependable friends and employees, while others had been part of her personal collection and kept secure among her possessions. Some of these letters eventually came to light, providing insights into Diana's innermost feelings. She expressed her steadfast love for her sons in one letter to a close friend. She wrote, "I live every day to make sure they know they are loved beyond measure because they are my greatest joy." She expressed her worries about William and Harry's reaction to the separation in another letter. She wrote to a confidant after her divorce, "I just want them to be happy and grow up knowing they are supported no matter what." Diana's dedication as a mother was demonstrated by these letters, but they also brought up fresh issues. Had she left a parting message for her children before she passed away? Given that she had previously written so candidly about her love and worries, where was it if so? The notion that Diana had written a letter that was never made public and that she might have wanted William and Harry to read when they were older was the subject of years of conjecture. Some suspected that such a letter had been stored in private royal archives, while others speculated that it was one of the numerous undiscovered documents she left behind. These questions weren't rekindled until decades later by a new discovery. Diana's letters, which included never-before-seen sentiments, were discovered at an auction in a private collection in 2024. One letter stood out among the rest. It was a note to her sons that had been kept secret for years. Diana had previously frequently voiced similar sentiments in this letter, which is said to have been written in early 1997, but it was written with a greater sense of urgency. Although the tone was kind, it also conveyed a hint that Diana had been considering the future in a manner she had not previously discussed publicly. There was something more in the letter. Even though a lot of it repeated what she had said in public about wanting her sons to grow up feeling loved and supported, it also included a contemplation of the difficulties they could encounter, the demands of their positions, and a silent wish that they would always have the guts to pursue their own interests. When weighed against the choices William and Harry would make as adults, her comments took on new significance. Even within the restrictions of royal life, Diana had always desired for them to have options and a sense of independence, and in many respects, those ideals had influenced the way both of her sons had fashioned their futures. As the letter's specifics were revealed, further debate arose regarding why it had been kept secret for so long. Had it been kept out of sight on purpose? Was it just missed? Above all, what did it disclose about Diana's outlook for her children's future? Discussions concerning Diana's feelings regarding her children's future and her increasing worries in the last months of her life were rekindled when her letter was made public. There were concerns about why the letter had been hidden for so long given the timing of its recovery. It had been discreetly preserved according to some experts, while others thought it had only taken years for its contents to come to light. Whatever the cause, its message was now being examined from a different angle. The letter was expected by people who have researched Diana's life. She had always been a very expressive person who frequently wrote about her feelings. She penned personal letters for everyone she cared about, particularly William and Harry, as those close to her had long known. This specific letter was noteworthy not only because of what she wrote but also because it appeared to show an increasing feeling of urgency. Diana had talked candidly about the demands of being a princess, the unceasing scrutiny she endured, and her need to protect her kids from the same hardships. However, it seems from this letter that she had been planning even more forward. Her writing, which was completed only months before she died, reflected feelings she had previously voiced. She emphasized to William and Harry that their pleasure was more important than any royal obligation, that they were loved without conditions, and that they should never feel constrained by the demands made of them. Diana had long expressed her desire for her children to have a different experience than her own, so these ideas were not new. But this letter was different in a significant way. She was encouraging them to actively pursue their freedom rather than only wishing for it. Even though it didn't foretell the future, the letter's content seemed uncanny in retrospect. Diana had written about the strict customs of the monarchy, and how enjoyment should come before duty. She had written about how people who did not set boundaries for themselves could become consumed by the weight of societal expectations. Outside of their royal responsibilities, she had urged her boys to never forget who they were. The world had been speculating about Diana's level of future foresight for years. She had warned about feeling insecure and being watched in several of her previous communications. She had told friends she thought someone was following her. The tone of this letter to William and Harry indicated that she had been prepared for the possibility that she would not always be there to lead them even if it made no explicit mention of danger. Diana had a nuanced view of the monarchy. Although she had never completely embraced the institution's customs, she had also never rejected it outright. Although she had been critical of the institution's lack of emotional support, she had also talked favorably of the royal family's role in serving the public. Her opinions had changed over time, and by the late 1990s, she was convinced that the monarchy needed to change to stay relevant. Although she had previously voiced this opinion in public, It was very intimate in this letter. Although she recognized that her sons would always have a royal family connection, she also emphasized to them that their private lives and decisions were equally as significant as their public personas. She exhorted them to welcome change, to challenge customs that no longer benefited them, and to prioritize their health at all times. Diana's letter appeared to foreshadow William and Harry's future adult paths in many respects. Even though they were still young when their mother died, the choices they took in the years that followed appeared to be consistent with the principles she had wished to inculcate in them. As the future king, William struck a balance between his royal responsibilities and a contemporary view of family life. He and Catherine Middleton made the decision to bring their kids up in a regular way, emphasizing active parenting in a manner that had not been customary in the royal family. Harry, meanwhile, chose a more straightforward strategy when paving his own way alongside Meghan Markle. His choice to leave royal duties in 2021 represented a break from the expectations that had been imposed on him since infancy. Although the letter's contents did not directly outline their futures, its themes struck a profound chord with them. It supported the widespread suspicion that Diana had been planning forward, that she had feared her kids would eventually struggle under the same system that had caused her so much suffering, and that she had wanted them to feel empowered to make their own decisions. As the letter's specifics were made public, debates concerning the royal family's place in the contemporary world were also rekindled. Diana had frequently discussed the need for the monarchy to change, and her remarks seemed more pertinent than ever at this point. Since her death, the institution has undergone numerous changes, but certain conflicts persisted. The public's perception of the royal family had changed, and the gap between those who thought it should be more flexible and those who thought it should continue its traditions was widening. The letter served as a very intimate reminder of their mother's support and affection for William and Harry. However, to the world, it was more a reminder that Diana's voice still mattered decades after her death, a sign of her lasting influence, and a window into the mind of a lady who had questioned the established quo. The discussion around Diana's letter went beyond William and Harry. As the general public considered the words she had left behind, it developed into a more extensive conversation on her influence on the monarchy and the decisions that were now determining its course. Within the royal family, Diana had previously been viewed as a disruptive figure who questioned the status quo in ways that unnerved many around her. However, her influence has only increased in the years following her death. In various ways, her sons had taken her teachings with them. William had tried to modernize some components of the royal system while staying inside it. In order to protect their kids from undue media attention and keep their relationship with the public intact, he and Catherine Middleton had decided to raise their kids in a regular way. The principles Diana had emphasized were reflected in their choice to send their kids to schools outside of the royal tradition and to project a more approachable family image. However, Harry had taken a different route, completely renouncing his regal responsibilities. One of the most important events in contemporary royal history was his split from the royal family in the year 2000. He talked candidly in interviews about the difficulties he encountered as a child growing up in the spotlight and the demands of his role. His choice to leave was motivated by his desire to safeguard his family, as well as his own well-being, which was similar to Diana's own worries decades before. Diana's letter's appearance gave these choices further background. Her wish that her sons would always be free to make their own decisions was reflected in her words, which she wrote when her own future seemed uncertain. She had written about the value of staying true to oneself rather than about particular routes they should follow. That was a powerful message in a monarchy in which duty and tradition were paramount. The letter prompted fresh discussions over Diana's ties with the royal family in addition to William and Harry. Both her public influence and her personal hardships had shaped her tenure as Princess of Wales. The public had loved her in a manner that few other royals had, yet she had frequently felt alone in the palace. She had talked about how she felt ignored, how she wanted to make the royal system more transparent and emotional, and how she encountered opposition to her efforts. Although her attempts to reinterpret what it meant to be a modern royal were not always well received, they had changed public perceptions in many respects. The younger royals, especially William and Harry, had grown up in a society where it was hard to deny the impact of their mother. Diana's principles had influenced their outlook on life, regardless of whether they stayed in the monarchy or left it. As the letter's specifics were still being examined, theories regarding why it had taken so long to surface emerged. Some questioned whether it had been purposefully concealed from the public, while others thought it had been kept secret out of respect for William and Harry. For many years, the royal family had strictly enforced confidentiality regarding private correspondence, and it was common for important historical letters to go years without being shared. But it was especially noteworthy since it emerged at a time when discussions regarding the future of the monarchy were more heated than ever. The message served as a reminder of Diana's values for those who had followed her tale with great interest. She was a mother who battled to provide her children with a life that went beyond the expectations of their titles, and she was more than just a regal figure. She had been a humanitarian who raised awareness of previously unheard-of causes by using her position. Additionally, she had been a woman who had defied a system that did not value individuality. The emotional impact of her remarks transcended history. They conveyed a message that felt current, even if they were merely a reflection of the past. The monarchy kept changing, but the issues Diana had brought up decades before still persisted. What place does emotion have in a tradition-based organization? To what extent should obligation be weighed against personal happiness? And would the royal family be able to maintain its legacy while genuinely adjusting to the modern world? The responses to these questions had taken different forms for Harry and William. Harry had completely left the system, but William had decided to work inside it, changing it from the inside out. In their own unique ways, both routes illustrated the difficulties of being born into a job with expectations they had not selected. Despite being written at a different time, their mother's letter had foreseen the difficulties. She had wanted them to understand that their identities were not only determined by the organization they were born into and that they were more than their titles. As word spread about the letter's existence, it became evident that Diana's voice had never really diminished. Her influence persisted in shaping her son's decisions, discussions about the monarchy, and the general public's understanding of what it meant to be a royal in the contemporary world. Seeing changes that others had not yet noticed, she had always been ahead of her time. Years have passed since her death, yet her words continue to inspire, challenge, and remind people of the woman who once redefined what it meant to be a princess. The video for today has now come to an end. Make sure to see the other videos on the channel if you followed us this far.